My life changed forever when I met Sam. I met him after he transferred in from out of state. It was already the third trimester of our sophomore year. Coming in so late in the year definitely sparked the attention and curiosity of all of us. Sam was a scrawny, sickly-faced kid with thin, patchy hair, long sticks for arms, and big black bags under his eyes, which stuck out over his almost greenish skin. He looked like an escaped terminal hospital patient. I felt bad for the guy. I wondered what was wrong with him. Our curiosity only grew when classmates began trying to talk to him. I remember one time in math class, my friend Mary sat next to him to introduce herself and maybe try to get to know him a little better. It was hard being the new kid, after all. "What school did you transfer from?" Mary asked. Keep in mind, Mary's really cool and super easy to get along with. I remember the look he gave her when he turned to respond. It was a cold, empty look that immediately sent a chill up my back. It was almost like he was analyzing her and fixating on details of her face, from her short blonde hair down to her narrow jaw. Whatever he was doing, it didn't look right at all. "What school did you transfer from?" he asked back sarcastically. Mary didn't stick around to respond. I always assumed he was trying his hardest not to make any friends because of his condition, whatever it may have been. Maybe he knew he wasn't going to be at our school very long. Maybe he thought there wasn't much of a point in trying to make friends while he was here. I felt really sad for him. No one learned much about Sam over the first couple of months, but a lot of us still couldn't help but be curious about him. The first major insight into his life came when I saw his dad drop him off one morning. I knew Sam lived a few blocks away from me because we usually rode the same bus together, although he'd often sit quietly in the front by himself. He was being dropped off in what I thought must be a pretty nice foreign car, as I couldn't recognize what kind it was. His dad stepped out of the driver's seat to get the door for Sam. His dad was attractive and charming looking, even for an older man. As he was helping Sam, he certainly didn't look too worried about Sam's condition. Maybe Sam wasn't actually all that sick. Maybe he was just putting up a strong face for his sake. His dad caught me staring at them and politely waved at me. I awkwardly waved back and went inside. Later that day, I was catching up on homework during my free period when I heard a voice. "I'm not very good at making friends." I turned and saw Sam looking sincerely into my eyes. The sound of his voice shook me at first. I'd barely heard him speak since he arrived and forgot what he even sounded like. I looked back at him, almost repulsed by his presence, but at the same time, I still couldn't help but feel bad for him. He was finally trying to reach out to someone. All I wanted to do was help him, try to comfort him. He looked like he really needed it. "It's okay, I've been there before too," I said encouragingly. "My name's Danielle." He smiled warmly back. We talked a lot over the next few weeks. He told me about how he was sick, how he was in and out of a lot of different schools so that he could be closer to various doctors and specialists who might help get him better. Not long after, he admitted that he didn't think he had much time left, and although he didn't want to hurt anyone in his passing, he'd just been so lonely. He said he couldn't bear the idea of leaving without making at least one real friend. I always suspected he chose me because he thought I was pretty, which very well may have been the case. It didn't matter too much to me, though. After all, he was actually pretty nice and fun to talk to once you got to know him. There was no announcement when Sam finally stopped showing up at school. He had told me the week before he had another big doctor's appointment, but that it wasn't looking too good for him. A lot of people asked me about it, since they knew we'd grown closer recently, although I really didn't know much more than the rest of them. I did, however, know where he lived, or at least where I thought he did. Like I said, we rode the same bus together, and a couple times I would get off at his stop and walk him home. It was that dumpy Rambler on 2nd Street where the road ended. It always struck me as weird that they lived in such a crummy house when his dad drove such a nice car and was able to pay for all those hospital visits. Since they moved around so much, though, I guess it made sense that they probably wouldn't live there very long anyway. After school, I decided I was going to swing by there and see if he was doing okay, or give my best to his dad if, God forbid, he wasn't. The bus dropped me off, and I walked to the end of 2nd Street, to that ugly house, and made my way to the front door. The garage was closed, and I couldn't tell if that foreign car his dad drove was inside or not. I rang the doorbell. I could hear it ring faintly on the inside. No answer. I tried again. Still no answer. I went to knock when I realized the front door had been slightly ajar. It swung open more as my fist tapped the front of it. "Hello?" I said, peeping my head slightly inside. "Your door was open. Is there anyone home?" I waited for a response, but didn't get one. I turned to leave when suddenly I heard a large, violent thud come from underneath the floor. It sounded like someone may have taken a nasty fall in one of the basement rooms. "Sam, is that you?" I yelled out, a little louder than before. "Are you hurt? Do you need help?" There was still no response. I walked inside. Whatever that noise was really did sound like someone got hurt. If Sam fell and his dad wasn't around, he would need help or someone to call 911. The door led into the living room, which was filthier than I would have expected with a sick kid living there. I saw empty, half-eaten food containers littering the coffee table and some of the floor around it. The TV was on. It was kind of fuzzy. Some weird Russian show playing. Suddenly, I heard a loud clanking from around the corner past the kitchen. That must be where the stairs to the basement are, I thought. The clanking sounded like someone dropping a large metal beam. Maybe his dad was working on something down there. The more sensible part of me wanted to turn around, walk out of the house. On any other occasion, common sense probably would have overridden my curiosity, and I would have simply left and just called the police. That day, though, I just felt so worried about Sam. I couldn't stand the thought of something happening to him if I could have prevented it. I ventured forward into the kitchen. The curtains in there were drawn. It was much darker in the kitchen than the front of the house. If I hadn't just come from outside, I would have thought it was already nighttime. The sink was full of dirty dishes, and there was an unpleasant smell lingering in the air, like rotting food and mildew. A fruit fly flew into my mouth, and I spat it out. "Sam?" I asked again. "Danielle." A voice cracked through a door at the far end of the kitchen, presumably creeping through from downstairs. It was definitely Sam. His voice sounded muffled and shaky. "It's me, Sam. Are you okay?" I said as I headed toward the basement door. "Danielle, I'm down here. Please hurry," he replied faintly. I reached for the door and I pulled it the rest of the way open. It was heavier than I expected. The handle was ice cold. I peered down into the void of the basement. The architecture had changed from the cheap cookie-cutter starter home to a dank, cobweb-infested, cave-like pathway. A dim light barely broke through somewhere within its depth. I started down the steps, which teetered and creaked as I descended. The air was noticeably colder and thicker down here, like I was entering a real cave, even though I could still see the wooden outline of the stairway, covered with exposed insulation and vent tubing. I reached the floor. I could feel its damp stickiness all the way through my shoes and socks. What exactly was I walking into? I couldn't comprehend that I was still somewhere that could exist in my neighborhood. I felt like I stumbled on some kind of dark and dangerous world that only existed on TV, not the safe and boring town that I spent my life growing up in. I knew I had to get Sam out of there, and fast. Although it was dark ahead of me, several meters ahead, I could see a dimly lit figure curled up in a ball on the floor, underneath a yellowish light bulb that swung slightly from its cord. I noticed now that the figure and I were separated by what appeared to be a wall of bars, like those of a cell or a cage. The dim light made the shadows of the bars bounce off the floor like a series of swaying towers. I had to squint my eyes, but I knew the figure beyond them was Sam. "Oh my God, Sam," I whispered. "What's going on? We've got to get you out of here." Sam, still curled in his ball, poked his head up. Then, suddenly, before I could take one more step, before I could comprehend what was going on, before I realized that someone else was in that basement, A pair of large, strong arms wrapped around my body, lifted me off the ground, and rushed me towards the cage. I tried to kick as I saw Sam stand and open the cage door. I tried to break free from the grip of the man's sweaty grasp, with his fingers digging deep into my skin. I screamed as the man threw me into this cage, this cell, and slammed the door shut with a room-shaking clang. Confused and trembling, I turned around and recognized the man as Sam's father. Was it his father? He gave Sam a pat of approval as Sam headed back up the stairs. I shouted for his attention, shouted to Sam for help, for a reason to why this was happening. Sam didn't turn around. He just kept walking away. I screamed again, clawed at the bars, desperate for any means of possible escape. This can't really be happening, I thought. There's no way this can be real. It just can't be. I cried hysterically. I sank to the floor. I looked up and locked eyes with the man. He was smiling at me. It was that same smile he gave me when he dropped Sam off at school. I kept sobbing as the reality of what was happening washed over me. The man, still smiling, gripped a phone from his pocket and held it to his ear. I couldn't understand him. It sounded like he was speaking Russian. His voice was scratchy. He sounded like he was far, far away now. I was in a complete daze. His voice ricocheted in my head. He kept staring at me with that smile when his words switched to English. Yes, about 5'4", maybe 110. Oh yes, long dark hair. He was describing me. Absolutely. Okay. I'll have her ready by Friday.